to see.
The public.
Yeah, it will take like 5-10 seconds more for them to see the video and hear the audio. So let's see what will people say, if they can hear us or not. Okay.
Oh, great! They can hear us.
Yeah, they can hear us, which is good. I'll just have to lower the volume on all of the tabs I have opened, so we don't get an echo. In the meantime, I've become to see. No. I did a mistake. For them to see it's echo video and audio. Sorry guys. No. Okay.
Oh, well, at least we are not live yet.
No, this is not the official start, so it doesn't count. So it's all good. Okay. It's here and here is okay. Super. Yeah. Okay, welcome everyone. One more time. This time, for the second time, we have Dax Pandey with us, the co-founder, and you're also a developer, right?
Yes.
Of the world famous terrain generation software Gaea, the best of the best, the finest of the finest. So good evening, Dax, and tell me, how are you? What's the time there, and so on?
It is 10:30 at night, and yeah, it's the perfect time for a live stream.
I agree. I totally agree. So a lot of good things have happened since our last talk, which is also available if you search it on our channel. I mean, I don't know any other software that I'm using that has so many updates. Like really, maybe Blender does, but like you guys are really like updating it frequently. So it feels like there's like 50 people working, but that's not the case, right?
Yeah, it's just like a team of 4 very crazy people.
That's great. Okay, I can't talk about some stuff, but maybe you can. So let me just share. If you have already prepared something on your end, let me just share your screen so we can jump right into the subject. So here,
well, apparently some people are saying the audio is delayed and repeating.
Really? Still?
Oh no, okay, it's fixed.
Felix, we're gonna ban you, but not today. So yeah, okay, now we see your desktop, I think, and we see the like, how do you call this, opening screen, or
just the startup screen.
So yeah,
I guess we can start with like a basic introduction, because I'm sure there are many people who may not have seen the software before. So basically this is, I'll just start a new blank project, and this is just like any other 3D software, just instead of creating meshes, we just create terrains. And it is all procedural, so like it uses noises and other algorithms to do things for you, but you don't have to worry about like how it does it. You can just choose a few things and it'll give you good results. And it's kind of like in normal 3D apps, you would have primitives like spheres and cubes and planes. We have mountains and valleys and things like that. And so when you start, you have this simple thing. It's like there's a mountain, it's ready for you, and you erode it, which is like a natural process of making it look like it's gone through like thousands and thousands of years of natural processes, and you kind of have like a relatively realistic looking mountain right there. And it's node based, which like the thing is, whenever I say node based, like half the people are really excited and half the people want to leave the room. But if people are scared of nodes, there's no reason to like be scared. It's not like you're not going to end up with like giant complex things unless you want to.
What is a node actually? For
So
those
a
who are like
node,
totally like unaware of any, like programming terminology or whatever, like or software or anything like that. Like, what is a node?
so a node is basically this thing here, or any one of these blocks here, and they're just that. They're like building blocks. So if you think of it like pieces of Lego, it's kind of like that. And so each one has a specific function. They either create something or they modify something you've already created. And so in normal 3D terminology, it's just like selecting a mesh and adding some sort of modifier on top of it. So here we have a mountain primitive, which is creating this basic shape. And then we have a displace modifier on it. So it's displacing it. And then we have an erosion modifier on it, and that gives it that erosion simulation. And so each of these nodes is basically just a command, really. And the great thing about procedural design is that, let's say, you choose to change something later, like with the basic shape. Like right now, I'm going to give this a very eroded look like this. And I go, okay, this is great, but I don't want like a single mountain. I want an entire mountain range, but I still want it to look like this. So all I have to do is pull in a new node from the toolbox, and I'm using a mountain range node instead of just a mountain node. And then I can connect the output from here and replace it in the other one, and it'll reprocess everything. You can see it has that same kind of look, but it changed the base shape. And that's kind of like the advantage of procedural modeling, where oh, actually, I just noticed comments that my audio is really low. So let me just change my settings.
I have also increased it a bit.
Okay, let's see. Is this better?
We'll have to wait for that for at least 10 seconds. So
So too bad I can't. Too bad I don't have my video on. Otherwise, I could show people my really super expensive mic stand.
the
'Cause my
other
mic
the other
stand
comment
broke.
the comment to Twitch is it's killing my ears. So I don't know, like if it's too loud for someone, and but yeah, okay. Yeah, please continue. I'll try to, follow the
Oh no,
reaction.
I was just saying my mic stand broke, and so I now have a toilet paper roll as my mic stand. It is
Ah.
the most expensive mic stand in the world right now. But
Yeah.
anyways, all right. So
Sorry, I had to check something. Sorry.
no, that's
Yeah, please continue.
so
Sorry,
the
just one
basic
question from me. Are we looking at the like latest build of Gaea? Is this already available for anyone who'd like to, try it or buy it?
yes. So this is a beta version of 1.2, which is publicly available for everyone to try. It is stable enough, and what I'm using here is a slightly newer nightly build, and probably by the end of this week, this will be public as well. So everything that you'll see today that I'm going to show is already available. All we are publishing is going to be like a few bug fixes and whatever performance updates. But if anyone wants to try this right now, it is available.
Cool.
So as I was talking about procedural modeling, the great thing is, like, if let's say if you sculpt something by hand, you get a lot of design options and you can do like the tiniest thing. But Like, like it happens on any project. The art director comes in and says, this is great, I just want you to modify this bit, and then you have to redo the whole thing. But with procedural design, it's kind of like you're making it a recipe and giving it to the computer, and the computer gives it back to you in a very fixed way, and you can change a tiny thing and it'll apply the rest of it for you. So just like how we change from mountain to a mountain range, and the rest of it just automatically gets applied.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that is a very basic example, but another thing that, especially for game design and everything, a concern is like creating realistic textures, or if you're doing skyboxes and you need something quickly, but you also want it to look really good. And so we have lots of texture creation tools, and I'll show you just how easy it is. So if we just take this mountain, I'm going to increase the preview resolution from um, 512 by 512 to 1K, and now the
Mm-hmm.
graph is reprocessing. And now, because it's procedural, I didn't have to change anything, and it's
Mm-hmm.
at a higher resolution.
Default for when you start working, default is like 512, right?
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
although you can change it, and you can have it be whatever default you want
Uh-huh.
for your
Okay.
own personal use. So if you have a nice terrain, and for now this is something useful, we can actually take this into Unreal and walk around and like build a whole level here, and these can be like the distant mountains. So texturing is a complex process, and we tried to make it very easy. So we actually have a node called texture, and uh, I'm gonna there it is. Drag and drop it on. Actually, we also have this thing. If you don't like connecting nodes, just drop one on the other, and Gaia will connect it for you. So now, when we give it this texture node, it analyzes everything, runs a bunch of different simulations, like natural processes and things like that, and it creates this black and white mask on which you can do any type of color processing. And so normally in most software you would have to work with gradients that you create yourself, like these color ramps.
Mm-hmm.
We actually have one more thing that makes it a bit easier. It's We actually looked at satellite images and real world photos, and gathered all sorts of color things into a sat maps node.
Mm-hmm.
So on top of the texture, I can just drop a sat map node, and I have a library of things to just pick from.
So the set map node is like a some sort of a color ramp or a color range.
Indeed.
Mm-hmm.
So we made these color ramps using real color values from satellite
Mm-hmm.
photos from all over the world. So just about any biome or ecological situation you want, there will be a map for that. And we
Uh,
kind of like
would I be
split
like
it into
too big of a noob if I ask what is biome?
biome is just like a type of environment, like a
Mm-hmm.
forest or
Mm-hmm.
a desert or
Okay.
something like that. And so like if we go to sandy, which is quite common, then you have all sorts of things, and not just like yellow sand, because if you've been to enough deserts, you'll find there's lots of different kinds of sand. So I'm just going to randomly pick a texture, and you can see it's creating this complex texture, but it's a bit abstract. So I'm going to go and make our terrain the underlay, so it like the color map is seen on the terrain, and there you go, that texture map is generated for you. And that's pretty much ready for export.
Amazing.
One of the things that we added recently was, even though we have been focused very much on uh, like creating super realistic output, a lot of users wanted like to create like really cool looking maps. And so we have this new thing called cartography.
Yeah, that's amazing.
So um,
That's really amazing. I wish
it
I
just
had
gives
that
you
when
like
I when I worked on a strategy game for a client. Like a World War II thing. I wish I
Oh.
wish I wish I had Gaia, and I wish I had this node.
because this was never a planned thing. It's kind of like our roadmap has been kind of like a living roadmap where we want the users to tell us what they want, and then we'll go and add it. And so this was something like we kind of worked on weekends, and it was never part of the plans. We just thought, but everyone wants it, so let's just make it. And then it just made it there. And so you can do all sorts of little like design choices, like grid lines and like how many and the intensity. You also like the color levels for everything and make it look like any kind of map that you want. You
It's so
can even
amazing
do
when
orders.
it's such a difference when you're the author and the
Mhm.
owner or co-owner and co-founder of the software, compared to someone who is hired to work in a big company for a position, basically person who's just looking for a job. I mean,
Uh-huh.
because it's like the passion is like really obvious in your case for this, so it's obvious that you would work on this even if you wouldn't earn any money from it.
Mhm.
But but then you can also control what will be developed. So you can. I mean, probably this is the reason behind so many updates. Because like you have
Yeah.
so many ideas about how to improve the software, and you're like really dedicated to the tiniest detail. Very often you inform people, about some totally like minor UI thing that like really helps a lot, and something that we as users don't even think about, but so this is really, really, really amazing.
Yeah, and it's we also like we have this really nice community on Facebook, and we get so much great feedback from these people, and being able to learn. That's something that we wanted to do from the start, is like just make sure that we keep listening to users, that after we sell a few copies, we don't want to become like so like have our head become so big that we stop listening to what users want, because at the end of the day we're nothing without them. So they tell us like do this, we'll make sure that we do our best for that. um
I can read you a question from
sure.
like 10 minutes ago. It's about like Ben Stanley asks, are you going to talk about the live link between Gaia and UE4, Unreal Engine 4?
Ah, so there is no direct live link yet, but that is something we are working on. And we actually have a bunch of software that we want to create bridges for. So we already have one with Houdini, and both Gaia and Houdini were like, we just got like a bunch of major upgrades on both sides. So we're redoing the entire bridge. And so when the final release of 1.2 comes out in a few weeks, there's going to be a whole new, or rather, a overhauled bridge with Houdini. And then after that, we're going to look into like creating bridges with Unreal 4, Unity, Blender, and then eventually with 3D Max, Maya, and Cinema 4D. But
Uh,
at the moment, getting it into Unreal is not that complex. You can just export from this and import there manually. It's not as fast as, of course, a live link, but it's not too bad.
what about Blender? And I know that some software had some. Maybe with the live link, that's not a problem. But with the corner of my eye, I've been detecting some, problems about licensing when using Blender, which is open software, open source software, and so I don't know if this in any way affects a package like Gaia or not.
Oh, we're kind of kept our licensing very simple. So,
Mm-hmm.
the core of Gaia is it's like a command line builder. So you can just fire it off from anywhere. And so there's no licensing entanglement with any other software.
Mm-hmm.
So studios and everyone else, they don't have to worry about how to license this or how to work around this, at least as far as Gaia itself is concerned.
Cool.
And uh, the other thing we're also doing is like the Houdini bridge, which the side effects guys were
Mm-hmm.
fantastic, and they helped
Mm-hmm.
build that whole thing. That part of the package is part of their open source offering.
Mm-hmm.
And in the same way, when we create any new bridges, whether it's Unreal or Blender or even 3D Max, we are going to make them all open source and have them on GitHub. So it's community owned. People can contribute to it,
Mm-hmm.
and that way it can have a life of its own.
Cool. Because someone just asked, maybe you have seen it. Maybe you have referring to this question. Can you explain a bit more about Houdini integration with Gaia?
So right now in the current version, the integration doesn't exactly work. There's a bit of tweaking required, and so that's what we're working on right now. And when we release the 1.2 update, the new bridge will make it work.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
But the basic core concept of working in Houdini, for anyone who hasn't seen it, well, everyone's seen Houdini, they just haven't seen Gaia working in Houdini. But so basically, you can create kind of like a recipe. And so if we just look at what we have created right now, let's say I just want, at the end of the day, I want to sense any kind of terrain from Houdini. I just want it to come back looking like this kind of erosion with this kind of like a map look. Then you can just save this file in a specific way, which is you just, instead of range, you just use an input node. And then when you call that file from Houdini, you'll be able to access controls for like the erosion, for example. Those kinds of things you can edit straight from Houdini. Houdini will take care of the processing and sending it back. And so you kind of get the best of both worlds.
I have to mention that Dax will also be one of the presenters, speakers, demo artists. I don't know how to call it because there are so many categories for the upcoming IFCC online to 2020, which starts on 25th of May. So he'll probably do a bit deeper exploration of Gaia, and
Indeed.
so please join us. Or I suggest that you just subscribe to our newsletter. I will post the link in the chat, so to get updated on time about his involvement and involvement of other 60 speakers and demo artists. So yeah, please continue. Do your magic.
And that one, it's like because like of the whole context of that event, and that the demo will do, it'll be exactly like you said, deep dive. We go from like beginning to end and show everything that's needed to like do something that's production ready.
Cool.
So yeah, that's we were talking about the bridges, and so yeah, more bridges are on the way. um, we're kind of behind schedule right now on a few things, obviously because of the whole COVID-19 situation. And like, everyone's kind of working from home and trying to balance their work life and their home life. So things are a bit slow, but slow is fine. We want to keep working and maturing the software. A few more weeks won't hurt anyone.
Mm-hmm. Hope so.
Now, let's see. Do you have any? Okay, I'm sounding like a musician in a bar or something. Like, any requests?
Let me just check if anyone had asked anything here. No. Well, recently I myself was impressed by your Gaia exploration. So recently you did some really interesting canyon kind of looking thing, which it was brownish, and it kind of reminded me of some of the photos you have taken in the past, like looking for crocodiles, so because like maybe people don't know, but I mean you can maybe tell them about it, what you do on site when you're not developing Gaia. What's your like big passion?
Okay. Well, I basically chase crocodiles. Actually, I'm part of a small organization, and we are researching certain things about an endangered species of crocodiles, which is also kind of like fits in well with the Gaia work, because it's a great excuse to go out and see different environments and while you're waiting to get a glimpse of a crocodile, you get to study so much about the tiny detail in nature. I think, is this the terrain you were talking about?
Not, but this also looks amazing. So maybe you can do a breakdown of it.
So this is
I
also
will just
driven.
add that like the viewport and the rendering, because I don't have so much. I can't use it so often as I would want to. But the viewport and the rendering, maybe the reason is those textures. Oh, I don't know, but it looks so much better than it did like 8 months ago or something like that.
Right. So actually, what we did with Gaia 1.2 was we actually wrote our own renderer. And so, because Gaia is, in the end, it produces height maps, or basically just displacement maps. So it's 2.5D, it's not 3D. And most renderers out there are built for 3D rendering. And so we actually built a 2.5D renderer for all the tiny details that you see on the screen. And so the shadow accuracy and everything, is kind of like more closer to what you get in offline renderers. And so that's why we can give like a slightly crisper look. I think, let me see if I can. With this image, I can show you a great example of what procedural terrain design really means. It's like, so I was talking about biomes, and so this is a desert biome, and then let's say for some reason, we want to turn this into like uh, a sort of a snowy environment. And so with procedural design, you can do that, where you can have the shape remain the same and then have the coloring and other superficial processes just um, change everything for you. And I think I'm still looking for the image that you mentioned, and I think it's this one.
Yep, yep, that's the one.
Yeah.
That's the one.
So this is actually meant to look like the environment I kind of live in, and it was kind of scary because I actually put a Google Earth photo right next to my workspace, and I was okay. You need to make it look exactly like this. And then after a while, we kind of got there, and we're now adding new vegetation features that are made kind of specifically for like distant terrains. So, like for example, if someone's creating like a game vista where you have these, lush mountains that you want to show, or even these desert mountains. Now, you can't waste the game's processing power on tree instances that far, and then otherwise they'll just end up being like cards with alpha transparency that doesn't look that good from that far, or you end up with like a really strong normal map which also doesn't look that good. So with this kind of stuff, you can have distant terrains that have a vegetative look on it. And it's this is actually grown through a full simulation system. Like you just get like a few sliders to change, but underneath it runs a full ecological simulation of rainfall and how the water flows and what gets absorbed and where should trees grow and all of that. And in the very near future, it will also be animatable, so you can actually do like if the rains stop, the water level goes down, then the trees should start drying up, things like that.
Uh, Someone asked, the same person, Ben Stanley,
Hmm.
how do you go about blending multiple biomes together? I'm building a map for tabletop game that spans across several continents.
Okay. So I'll give you a great example. So let's just this is kind of oversimplified, but we have two different maps here. This is red and this is blue, and we can just assume there are two different biomes. So if you have a very specific map that you want to like, or boundaries rather, like in a game, then I will connect a mask node to the combiner, and I'm just going to draw a mask. So let's say I just want, actually this shouldn't be black, but this is because I was too lazy to install the stable build, and I'm just using the nightly build I was working on earlier today. So I'll just make this like half. And so um, you now have two biomes blending. Actually, just go to normal blend so you can see it's blue in this.
Mm-hmm.
Now, instead of like a hand drawn mask, you can have it be a procedural mask of some sort, like maybe by height, that everything be on this height or something like that. And then instead of just a color map, you can even have like different vegetation nodes. So you basically create the two biomes separately, and then you just use a blending mask to blend the two of them together.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
Uh,
Let me check.
and there's another thing that we're working on, because for the first year we worked very specifically for game developers, because a lot of them were using Gaia and we were prioritizing their needs. Now we have lots of VFX people using it as well. And one of the things in VFX, more than games, is that like artists have to go from one project to another, and often they'll be suddenly handed new requirements like, hey, make this thing, and then they don't have time to really learn a new software, so they end up having to force their existing software to make something it might not have been designed for.
Mm-hmm.
And so we added a bunch of these things called look dev nodes. And so that's where you can go like, look, I just want a desert terrain, or I want like a cliff face or something, and it kind of does the work for you. You can just give it a basic shape, whether you make it in Gaia or even just like, sculpt something in ZBrush and then export it as a displacement map into Gaia. So I'll show you a great example of it with a simple Perlin node with like no detail. So I'm gonna turn off all the detailing in Perlin, and like this is it. It's like it's I don't know. This should be called the gelato node or something. And so I'm just going to add this thing called stacks, which is basically stacked erosion, kind of like what you get to see in deserts. And it takes a bit more processing time than normal, but it kind of does the work of like 50 nodes. And you don't need to learn much about Gaia. You just bring in your basic shape, you apply one of the look dev nodes, and that's it. That's what you get from that smooth Berlin noise.
Amazing. One
So
node,
that's
one node, and we're already on some planet from Star Wars.
exactly. Oh, actually, if you want something very unique and uh, uncommon for like an alien planet, we also have a new one called Shatter. It basically starts like breaking parts of the terrain to make it look kind of alien. And so there.
This is a concept artist's dream, like with one button, generate new terrain so I can paint over it. So, and do some amazing stuff. So yeah, really amazing, cool.
So that's kind of like another direction where we want to work more on, is like to have these ready-made looks. So and and kind of not to have it be like where everything looks the same, because you are the one who's providing the actual initial shape. We just kind of like do the detailing on it. So there's a lot of room for creativity.
Cool.
Oh, I think we have a bunch of questions that I missed.
Mm-hmm. No, people. I'm trying to fix something here on my end because people are complaining. My keyboard is like really noisy, and I didn't take care of that, so I apologize for it. Will you ever? Okay. Are there any plans for Vulkan powered ray tracer supporting Gaia?
um Probably not, because we're not doing 3D ray tracing, so it would kind of like be using a tank to kill an ant.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to be developing our own render engine further, and right now it's pure CPU based, but
Mm-hmm.
it uses AVX and SMD instructions, so it's pretty fast. And we'll just keep developing that further. So there are like we actually have the rendering portion. If you like, the viewport is just for looking at, but if you want to export like the entire, like bake this light map, or whatever you're seeing, you just want to bake it and export it. For that, we have the light node, and that has advanced ray tracing options. Oops, what have I done? I may have. Oh, sorry, just selecting the wrong node. Okay, so this is the kind of like the render options. You can control the atmospherics. You can have like, all kind of ray tracing quality, ambient occlusion, everything. And so that already is like quite different from most of the rendering APIs we have out there, because this is specifically built for height fields instead of 3D.
Tell me, is in a software like Gaea, is something like, you know, vector displacement even a possibility? So so it's not only positive and negative values in one direction.
Right. So we can have like caves and
Yeah,
alcoves and
something.
things like that.
At least
Well,
some cuts, or undercuts or that kind of stuff. I mean, I know
right.
this is not an easy thing to accomplish, so I'm just checking if it's even like a possible.
Yeah, it is possible. It's not practical though,
Mm-hmm.
because the computing power required for doing erosion and other processes in 3D space is a complex problem.
Mm-hmm.
We do have R&D on it and going on, and we do have like some very interesting plans for the future. Um, Vector displacement, or just like basically, it's just we just want 3D terrains, like
Mm-hmm.
fully 3D terrains, and so we are working on that for the future. For now, we're going to stick with 2.5D, because game engines right now support 2.5D, and
Mm-hmm.
like even though vector displacement is supported in most modern game engines, or sometimes by like plugins or something you can buy, the thing is, like, terrains are so large. Like if you look at games like Horizon Zero Dawn or Red Dead Redemption, and the environments are so huge that game engines even right now are still just using 16-bit height maps, not even 32-bit.
Mm-hmm.
So if we just add a whole new dimension to it, then it's going to be like, instead of like data being squared, it's going to be data being cubed. That's going
Mm-hmm.
to require a few more generations of hardware.
Yeah. You can never satisfy the end user. Another question: will you ever implement any kind of volumetric slash voxel based erosion system? So I don't understand totally the question, but I know what voxels are, but in what way?
Right.
Maybe okay. I think I know what the question is, but you know better for sure. So.
Right. Basically, the end goal of what Jordan means, I believe, is that like of having different material values, and material in the sense of like when something erodes, like an entire mountain is not made of the same material. Like
Mm-hmm.
there'll be hard rock somewhere, soft sediments elsewhere, and that kind of is possible to a degree right now. But we do have something in the works for Gaia 2.0, which is still a bit far away. But we do have something for multi-material erosions, where the top layer erodes a little bit, and then the basalt rocks underneath or whatever get exposed, and that gets eroded in a different way. In fact, the stacks node kind of does that to a small degree, where you can see it has exposed rock. So when the superficial part of it grinds away, like the harder rock will remain. And then you can also, like in the erosion node, you can actually give it maps that define what part is hard, what is soft, and you can do multiple passes of that to get that kind of effect without having to go into voxels or 3D or volumetrics. It's a
As.
complex topic. I know
Mm-hmm.
half of it probably sounds strange, but
I don't know if you have seen the demo like few years back from some game, from some experimental game engine,
mhm.
which is totally based around voxels. They were like presenting, all the possibilities, with damaging environment and vehicles and that kind of stuff. So, um,
Oh, was that the Atom engine?
I can't remember, to be honest, but it really did look impressive. I mean, because like voxels kind of fill the volume. It's not just the surface, so it does look impressive with
Yeah,
all these little things like falling apart, and you can see the structure inside and all that. So,
yeah, that kind of stuff is amazing. I would
hmm
love to like have something of that sort. Um, it's uh, I think it'll be like for the industry to decide. It'll be one of those like VHS versus Betamax moments,
hmm
like whether they decide like the engine say, "Oh, we're just going to use voxels," or we're going to use meshes, and then we'll kind of like adapt to whatever is needed.
yeah. Okay, so let's see.
Yeah.
Maybe some more questions. Uh, hmm Okay. I jump from platform to platform to see like if anyone has asked anything.
All
Uh,
right.
but in the meantime, can you do some more of your things inside Gaia?
Sure. I'm loading up the
What's
file I
how do I pronounce it? Gaia or Gaia or I'm sure I'm
it's
doing it wrong.
uh, it's guy. It's kind of like my name. Nobody knows how to pronounce it. I've forgotten how to pronounce it. So it's Gaia mostly,
Gaia.
just
Okay.
simply. Yeah.
Someone was asking about the exports for OBJ, how to export OBJ. Maybe people just don't know that you have to, at least for exporting height maps and that kind of stuff, you have to actually mark a certain node, or was that the case before?
Yes. So yes. So any node that you want to save, you can right click and just say mark for export, and when you do the final build, it'll save it as your desired format. If you want more control or want a different format like mesh, you can attach a mesher node.
Hmm
And so with the mesher node, like I want this stacks to go and be an OBJ or an FBX, and then you can choose like the vertex count, whether you want quads or triangles. Even you can choose multiple LODs, and then when you build it, it'll turn the height map into meshes. Pretty straightforward.
for more serious users, um, what is to consider when assembling? If someone is really a professional doing terrains and that kind of stuff, what are the software hardware requirements or recommended hardware setup for Gaia?
Right. So we're basically mostly CPU based. We use the GPU mostly just for visualizing the viewport, but the actual processing, all that heavy work is done on the CPU. So having a good CPU is a great advantage. RAM always helps. So like a medium high range PC would be something like a recent generation i7 processor with 64 GB or even 32 GB RAM is plenty. I just upgraded to 64 GB a few months ago, and 32 was working more or less fine for me. I actually had to upgrade for my other 3D work. And with all the new AMD processors, like Gaia is very, very multi-threaded, especially when it comes to erosion and lighting and all that kind of complex stuff. So if you have a Threadripper or something, that'll give you that much faster results.
Cool. Another quick question: with the Mesher node, are there plans for GLTF support?
Not at the moment, but if enough people want it, we're more than happy to look into it.
What is GLTF for us who don't know?
It's actually just a file format.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very efficient, and it's gaining a lot of momentum. We kind of like one of the things we have to do again, like you're talking about how we can do so many updates. We kind of like have to balance that out because
Mm-hmm.
we can do a lot of things because we are small, but at the same time we can only do so much because we are small. So we kind of go for like convenience features faster because that's easier to implement. And I'm actually some people tell us like, oh, that's great that you're implementing so many convenience features all the time, and I go like, I don't know why more software don't do that, because for us it's kind of like the easiest thing to implement. And so if we can save you a few hundred clicks a week,
Yeah.
why not?
It's very interesting. In some software which we use like daily, like the famous ones, there are, you know, some things in the user experience that were like reported like thousands and thousands of times in the past like 10 years, and it's
Oh my
really
god, I have the perfect example. Look at the Windows character map. This is the same since Windows 95, maybe older. It's
yeah.
yeah. When you this is zoom, by the way. That's how much it zooms. That's it. So it's a great example of what not to do.
Yeah, just a second. Okay, let's see. Just a second. I have to check here. Nothing here. Quick question. Okay. Okay. Oh, I haven't seen this. Another question actually. What I wanted to ask. Yeah. So like sand dunes, or like the, you know, this desert pattern. You know,
Hmm.
it's something that like a lot of people are using very often because of their work, because many of them are working on some visuals, or either like the Egypt area with the pyramids, or something very similar but futuristic or sci-fi, you know, with planets. But can you show us like how to create that kind of terrain which would have like dunes? And I mean, I just want others to see how simple this is in your software.
Right. So, like with the mountain primitives, we have a dune primitive. So you just drop it and you kind of get these sand dunes. And you can change the scaling, or like if you want them to be more chaotic. Uh, oh, I'm in high resolution. That's why it's taking a bit longer to process. Or again, this might be because I'm running the nightly build. Oh no, there. Okay. So there, this is more chaotic. And so you can easily get like, you could change the scale, height, and that's it. And if you like let's say the other terrain that I'd created with the stacks like this, uh if we want to make this valley into sand dunes, that's very easy. Like I'll just drag a connection from the output of the stacks to the output of the dunes, which gives us a combiner. And I'm just going to use max blending,
Mm-hmm.
which I'm just going to go back to the dunes node and give it a clamp, so it kind of just raise it. And uh, there.
And so from here, how would we go about masking this? So, you know, in a 3D package, so we can more easily control the you know, materials, or at least textures.
Hmm. That actually is built in. So in the
Mm-hmm.
combiner, we just go and we just check separation mask, and it will create
Mm-hmm.
uh, this mask.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can just take that anywhere and then use it to do the texturing separately.
Cool.
And the other thing we could do is, let's say I already have like a bit of texturing going on. So uh, the dunes, we just want them to be kind of like a simple um, soft sand colors. I'll drag in a constant, and the constant node can either be like a flat height or it can be a color. And because sand dunes don't really have too much complex colors, I'll just give it like a flat shading for now. Uh, okay, that's kind of good enough. And so we have the see the red rock stuff that we created before, and I'll just combine these two, and then for the combines mask, I can just give it the separation mask from the previous one,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll right click and I'll pin this as underlay so the color map gets applied on that, and kind of have the
Mm-hmm.
two things merging. There we go. Now it's merging.
I have
If I put it to
noticed.
100.
I have noticed that some users manage to do like tileable patterns. I mean,
Mhm.
pattern is tileable, but like tileable textures from Gaea. Is this something that's built in, or is it some kind of a hack? Or
Oh, right now, like the few examples that we've seen, they're basically done in other applications like
mm-hmm.
Quixel Mixer.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of users are using like they will make the mesh in Gaia, then take it
Mm-hmm.
into Quixel Mixer and do like extra texturing work there.
Mm-hmm. So probably
Uh,
Mixer has some kind of blending between those repeating.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it can do that kind of tiling. We are working on making a lot of our primitives tileable from
Mm-hmm.
the get-go, so you can kind of have that built in.
Mm-hmm.
That is probably going to be sometime in like July or August.
So at first it will be like the most simple type of tiling, or are you maybe planning some something that can kill the repetition? I've seen like different approaches to
Yeah.
how to organize tiling so it doesn't look too tileable.
Right. We're actually looking into that because there are some great solutions for like where they randomize and blend
Mm-hmm.
the texture and all of that. uh, we're still kind of gathering feedback from users on
Mm-hmm.
what they really want from their tiling and where they want to implement it. So we're still kind of in the planning stage for the different implementations. So the first one we'll release will be just simple tiling, like
Mm-hmm.
a tileable Perlin noise or something like that.
Cool.
And then eventually we'll be able to get more things in. We will have one post processing tiler, so you can like this, you can give it this and it'll do stuff on the edges to make it tileable. And then that'll require a little bit of work on the artist side to make it look nice.
Cool. So if I mean, I don't know, do you want to add something? I know it's getting pretty late there. So do you want to add something? Maybe are you in a hurry? Should we molest you some more?
I'm all yours.
Yeah, cool. So how about my problem with this type of software?
Hmm.
Procedural with procedural unlimited procedural possibilities is
Hmm.
how to control stuff. I know that you also
Right.
have introduced some tools that are maybe more for artists, that you can actually paint in something, and
Hmm.
there were some examples with islands and that kind of stuff. So can you give us
Yeah.
some insights?
Sure. So the draw node is basically that. Sometimes you want like to start with a general shape that you already have in your mind, and so uh, with the draw node, you get to create guides from which Gaia will then kind of synthesize shapes. So actually, I'll just start a new file. I don't want to mess up this one. Start with a clean slate. So if I edit the guides, there's nothing right now, and I'll just go like, let's make this journey. And so it creates a basic mountain shape for you, and then you can process this further. Or if you want it to process it for you, you can just change the synthesis style from random to actually eroded, and then it will start eroding it as well. and you can, you have your typical drawing tools. So you have opacity and brush size. Eventually we'll have brush shapes as well, although in this case, like, you don't really need to worry too much about the minute shape of the brush. It's
Mm-hmm.
just, you're just giving it guides, so it's kind of creating it from that. And so that's a great way to get like a starting shape, and then you can work it further. You can easily just inflate it, uh, change the, like, the extents of it, and the height, that was a bit too much. So there, that's more like a mountain range you might see, when you're in an airplane.
Uh, Also, I mean, for those who maybe are, uh, I mean, who are new to this and can connect the dots, you can also import your own creation from another software, right?
Absolutely.
And then you
So
can apply all the power that Gaia offers on your pre-made design.
exactly, like, a popular workflow is, many people are very comfortable in ZBrush, so they will, like, make a basic shape there, then they will export like a displacement map created, like, through projection. They'll just create
Hmm.
a z depth map or a displacement map, then they'll bring that in Gaia, and then they can process it further here.
Which is cool because that can be like a character who is lying on the floor or some kind of skull or whatever that you can make
Exactly.
like a screen grab like z depth of in ZBrush. You can import it into Gaia and then apply the erosion and everything else.
Right. Another thing we will be adding very soon, probably like in a couple of weeks, is, I should have like a bad um, screen recording of this. There's a nice encoding error, but like, you can import an OBJ and then, transform it how you want, and then like Gaia will like turn it into a height map like live.
uh, yeah, that's the video, right? Okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's badly encoded. It's just a GIF file. But like, basically you won't have to like worry about, okay, I have this object now, how do I turn it into a z depth
Mm-hmm.
map or something like that. You just
Mm-hmm.
bring it in, and it can also be live linked, so later if you change the object a little bit, just save it again, and the whole procedural thing will apply on top of
Mm-hmm.
it.
That's cool. We have
uh,
another question. So I
mhm.
don't know if you have answered it already. Uh, with the cartographer node, do you support hexagonal overlays? This is probably a question for a game.
Mhm. Right. We actually did think of that, and so far, like, the node's very new, so we're gathering feedback, and we're, if there is demand for that, we're more than happy to add that. So far this is like the only second time I've heard that request. So at the moment it's not like a big priority, but yeah, like, make a post on our Facebook group, and if other people are interested, we're more than happy to look into adding that.
Another question. Uh, are there any plans or current methods to implement the kind of corrosion that glaciers cause with wide valleys but little erosion sediment? I think you've done something similar like a few weeks back or a month back, something with glaciers at least.
Yeah, that was actually a live stream which is on our YouTube, where I did like a whole breakdown of an like a Arctic glacier and how to build that. For the specific erosion related to glaciers, we do have thermal erosion, the thermal erosion node, which can simulate that kind of a look. But we're also looking into new glacier specific tools. So both for creating the actual glacier, like something like this. This is just like a section of a larger terrain. So you can create glaciers like this, and then also if you take away the glacier, then we would have very glacier specific erosion underneath.
This is already a bit more advanced usage of the software, right?
Yes, yes, it is. Yeah. uh, we're also adding things like these ice nodes, and the ice is something that we'll be focusing on a lot more this year.
Cool.
The uh, the other one that you're asking about, the island, like that's the other thing that was like uh, a really fun way to make um, islands where you kind of like control the shape but still let the computer do its magic on it. So like with the draw node where we kind of give it a guide for a mountain in the islands, it works in a similar way but the result is a bit different. So if I draw this line, it's going to create a weird shape from it, but it uses a very specific um, form of synthesis so that like you can create lots of islands and they kind of like organize themselves
Mm-hmm.
amongst each other. And so like let's say that was the main or sorry, those are the little archipelago or whatever, and we can just have like a main island around it. So things like that.
Something about my question is related to the compatibility between older and new versions. So when it when you create something in an older version, will the changes in the software affect the old files? So are there any suggestions on how to preserve files and so on?
Well, for the most part, we're trying to make it very backward and forward compatible. So, like recently, we updated a few nodes, and so when you load an older project, it'll ask you like, "Do you want to upgrade these nodes?" And you can say no, and it'll keep using the older form of
Mm-hmm.
processing. Sometimes there are slightly, larger changes that uh, are unavoidable and we can't have like the old and new coexist. So in those cases we kind of like tell users about that ahead of time so they can stay with the older version and while they're working in production, and then they can upgrade later when they're off the projection.
Cool.
Oh, here's another question from Ben about are Gaia project files safe to use with Git? Yes, they are. The Gaia file is just a plain ASCII file, so it works. And if you're using the Enterprise Edition, you can save in the TOR-X format, which will also let you use diff because it's an XML format, so you can actually do more advanced things with that.
On live stream, we last live stream we had a guest concept artist and filmmaker and whatnot named
Hmm.
Anis Naim, and I
Hmm.
at the end of the session I announced you, and I told him like, oh, you should definitely try this software, it's amazing. He's like, oh yeah, I bought it yesterday. So so the news is spreading really fast with Gaia in the last 1 or 2 years. More and more people are using it, which is great, I think.
Yeah, we are so excited. Like, especially it's like, for us, we're in code all day long, and we're thinking logistics and how to fix this error, this and that, and then to see people take this little software that we made and then create these beautiful creations, it's just mind blowing.
How do you keep
Just
up with the customer support?
uh, well, most of the time it's not too bad.
Hmm.
Um, and there are some days where
When it
just
is,
cry. But no, it's
are people
uh
realistic with their requests and
oh yeah, oh
yeah.
yeah, it's most of the time it's people are looking at solutions to specific things to their project, or sometimes they'll have like a maybe a little incompatibility with their environment or something, like especially in studios where it's a bit more difficult to install new software.
Hmm.
So that was another thing that like we changed recently was you can now install Gaia to either program files or to any other folder, so that way you don't have to worry about admin rights. because we didn't want, like, there are so many artists who are in studio and the only time they have to try something is like in between work, like they're waiting for a render. So okay, fine, I'll go
Mm-hmm.
try something for 10 minutes, and then they can't install it because of course they have to get in touch with the IT department and they will authorize this, and then of course if they want to get a new software, if it's a really large studio, then they have to get lawyers involved. It was crazy. So
Yeah.
we just like made it like, okay, just install it anywhere, no USE needed.
Do you? I mean, are there any requests from gaming companies or film companies towards you as an artist? I mean, you're an expert in terrain generation. So, do you work on something on the side and using your
Oh,
software for it?
I wish I could, but I really just don't have time anymore.
But
It's
we've seen your name in the credentials from that famous Unreal Engine slash Quixel Megascans video from the
Oh
last year
yeah,
already.
yeah, that was a great thing. And it's like, I came in very late because they had a specific shot that they needed very quickly, because like any production, like, it's there's never enough time, so they needed like a top shot of the car going into the facility, and they needed the whole Icelandic environment. And so that was a great place where uh, we were able to like quickly create the shapes that they wanted, but also the textures, because we have a node called a synth node, and where basically instead of those sat maps, you give it like concept art or anything, it'll extract colors from it.
Mm-hmm.
And so we basically just took the same Quixel asset diffuse maps that they were using in production, and we just gave the synth node that, and so we were able to get some really cool textures quickly. And I think it was we finished the whole terrain like in like maybe 2 days or something like
Mm-hmm.
that. It's very fast. But that was the last uh, consulting job that I did.
Mm-hmm. Uh, okay, I think we're done. Uh, I think our last session was a bit longer than this one, but I'm also learning to control myself in these past few sessions because I always have so many questions and I talk too much, and I'm just trying
Oh
to be.
my
I'm trying to
god.
control myself before the event to be as professional as I can when once the event starts, and when I'll have to talk to, I don't know, like maybe I'll have a someone who will help me out, but uh, if I want, I'll have to talk to up to 60 people, and
Mhm.
so yeah, I'm trying to uh, keep it
Maybe,
simple.
yeah, maybe you can teach me, because like when I start talking about Gaia, it's like, like a new parent with his baby. I just keep showing everyone pictures and saying, "Look how cute it is."
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, when you're passionate about something, it's I think it's like a normal thing. You just want to talk about it, and uh, I don't know. I'm like you're
Well,
right.
I'll give you a great example of that. It was like a strange moment for me. Just a couple of weeks ago, like Doom Eternal came out. I had been like so excited about that game, and I just go, okay, I'm playing it, and while I was playing it, I suddenly thought of something. I stopped the game and went back to program. It's like a very weird
Yeah.
experience for me. I've never stopped a game to go work before.
Yeah, I mean, I rather spend time creating something inside some software, even if I won't use it for anything, than playing games. It's just for me, it's a total a replacement of the game for games. Like building something inside of a software. Before we go away, I'm playing these images of yours in the background,
Hmm.
so people can see what is possible. This is just, I mean, you are just one of the Gaia users who are doing really amazing visuals with Gaia, and uh, I don't know who to mention. I know that you know Pablo. He's creating
Oh yeah, Juan Pablo. Yeah,
Yeah,
he's, oh my god,
he's creating fantastic stuff, and his experiments with Gaia and Mixer and
he made biological components, like he made like guts and stuff with Gaia. I have no idea how his brain works. I'm like equally in awe of him and scared of him sometimes. But he's just a genius.
yeah.
And we also have Adam Garland, who's like been with us from the start. He's a teacher at Capilano University, and like he does so much learning material for free for everyone. And he's been doing a lot of training material for Gaia. I think right now he's currently working on his master's degree, so he's been a bit quiet. But I consider myself very fortunate to have such a fantastic community because
Yeah, I
yeah.
mean the software is built in such a way that it's really easy to use. First of all, what I think that many people will confirm that the user interface and the whole user experience is just nice. It's well designed. The colors are nice. For me, for a visual guy that I am, it's kind of important, to have a nice looking interface that doesn't distract you in any way. So, and it's as simple as it is. It can also be like so complex. So you can really like, you can use it as a total noob, but then you
Mhm.
can really there's enough of it, to really dive deep into it, and discover whole new worlds inside this software. So
Just like we will find out when we do the main IFCC event.
yeah, so I just placed the slide where you are among other speakers. So I marked you as Gaia guy. So you can see that Dax really is on our list, and together with all the other start. Just let me check something here. Oh, not sure. I'll just ask people if they hear anything. Chat is working.
Oh, there, the slideshow is back on.
Okay, just a second.
Yeah, it's working again.
It's working again now. I'm not sure what you guys heard last, so don't even know where to continue. Well, yeah. Anyways, Dax will be with us in a month during our 6-day event, which is now online for the first time ever. So it will be like a big challenge. We expect up to 60 or more than 60 sessions with various guests, so it will be a nightmare for us, of course. But what can you do? And so that's like 10 sessions a day, I think. So we'll have like tons. I already started receiving materials from some of the guys, and it's like really mind-blowing what they did, both in 3D and 2D. So, and I think it will be fantastic. So yeah, can't wait to see what you'll be able to do. It's kind of hard when I like call your name out publicly. Then you're like, oh shit, I can't escape this, No. How do I tell Marco that I won't be able to do it? I just don't have time. But yeah, I'm fine with anything, So
I was actually going to joke about that earlier, but I thought, no, you have enough stress as it is.
Like I always expect the unexpected. So yeah, thanks everyone
Who
for
knows?
joining.
I'll give you 2 sessions. Maybe that will be unexpected.
Why not? Like or full year of sessions. That would be unexpected. Unexpected.
I didn't expect that. That's for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. If you have any last thoughts or anything, share them now or keep silent forever.
Um, No, it's just that's it. This is just like that tiny little preview to the main event, and if you guys liked it, come back for the main IFCC online session for Gaia, and we'll do like a proper deep dive and get into the nitty gritty of it all.
Cool. Cool. That's
Awesome.
it.
Well, thank you so much.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.